The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the archaeological dig site as Dr. Sarah Chen carefully brushed dust from a peculiar metal fragment. After 3 months of excavation in this remote valley of Mongolia, her team had uncovered dozens of artifacts that defied historical classification. Today felt different, though. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation. Dr. Chen called out one of her assistants, waving frantically from the eastern pit. "You need to see this." Sarah placed her tools down and made her way across the site, ducking under guide ropes and stepping carefully around marked sections. As she approached, she noticed an odd silvery light emanating from the pit, unlike anything she'd seen before. The light grew stronger as she peered down into the excavation. Her assistant pointed toward a partially exposed doorway embedded in the rock face. Strange symbols glowed along its frame, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that seemed almost alive. "It just started glowing about 5 minutes ago," her assistant explained, keeping his distance from the mysterious entrance. Sarah pulled out her phone to document the discovery, but the device was dead despite having been fully charged moments ago. Even her backup battery pack showed no signs of life. Something about this place was interfering with their electronics. As she stepped closer to examine the symbols, the glowing intensified. The air crackled with energy, causing the hair on her arms to stand on end. Before she could retreat, the doorway dissolved into a shower of silver particles, revealing a dark passage beyond. And there she stood. The woman emerged from the darkness like a ghost, her translucent skin emitting a faint phosphorescent glow. She moved with an otherworldly grace that made Sarah question whether she was hallucinating from too many hours in the sun. The stranger's features were eerily human-like, yet undeniably alien. Her eyes were too large, her fingers too long, and her silvery hair seemed to float as if suspended in water. But it was the alien's reaction that truly shocked everyone present. The moment her iridescent eyes fell upon Sarah, she stumbled backward. Her ethereal composure shattered as tears began streaming down her face, each droplet crystallizing into tiny diamonds before hitting the ground. "Astra," the alien whispered in a voice that echoed like wind chimes. "Astra, my little star." Sarah stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. The alien woman reached out with trembling hands, but stopped short of touching her, as if afraid Sarah might disappear. The research team watched in stunned silence as the stranger composed herself, wiping away crystal tears. When she spoke again, her words came out in an ancient language that none of them recognized. Yet somehow Sarah felt she could almost understand it. "I am Lyra," the alien finally said in perfect English, though her lips moved strangely with the words. "I have waited 50,000 years in stasis, hoping to find a trace of my people. But never," her voice cracked with emotion, "never did I dare hope to find you." "I'm sorry," Sarah managed to say, "but I'm not who you think I am. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm just an archaeologist." Lyra smiled sadly, reaching into a fold of her shimmering garment. She withdrew what appeared to be a holographic pendant. With a gentle touch, it projected an image into the air between them. A young woman who could have been Sarah's twin, dressed in flowing robes that matched Lyra's own. "This was my daughter," Lyra explained, her voice heavy with millennia of grief. "She died defending our people from an enemy we could not defeat. But her genetic pattern, it was encoded into the very foundation of what would become human DNA. You are not her, but you carry her essence more purely than any I have seen since the fall of the Eternals." Sarah stared at her own face in the hologram, her scientific mind racing to process the implications. Everything she thought she knew about human evolution and history began to unravel in that moment. And this was only the beginning. The sun had set by the time Sarah and Lyra sat inside the research team's main tent. Most of the crew had been sent back to base camp, leaving only Sarah's trusted assistant, David, to document their conversation. The alien woman's presence made the air feel charged, causing the tent's lights to flicker occasionally. "Our civilization," The Eternals reached its peak over 50,000 years ago. Lyra explained, her crystalline tears now dried. We had mastered immortality, conquered the stars, and believe ourselves to be the greatest achievement of evolution. She paused, a shadow crossing her luminescent features. Our pride became our downfall. Sarah leaned forward, clutching a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. You said something about my DNA, about your daughter. Lyra nodded, producing a small device that hovered above her palm. It projected a complex spiral of light, a DNA strand, but unlike any Sarah had seen in her years of research. Parts of it pulsed with the same silvery glow that seemed to emanate from Lyra herself. When we first arrived on Earth, it was to create a sanctuary, Lyra continued. We had discovered something in deep space, an entity we came to call the Void. It consumed advanced civilizations, drawn to the energy of immortal beings. We needed a solution, a way to preserve our legacy even if we fell. The holographic DNA strand transformed, showing the familiar human double helix structure. Certain sections lit up, matching patterns from the earlier projection. My daughter, Astra, proposed a radical solution. Instead of fighting the void with immortality and advanced technology, she suggested creating beings who were inherently mortal, but with the potential to evolve beyond even our capabilities. Lyra's voice filled with pride. She believed that the power to grow, change, and yes, even die, might be greater than eternal stagnation. David, who had been quietly taking notes, dropped his pen in shock as the implications became clear. Are you saying humans were engineered by your people? Not engineered, Lyra corrected gently. Seeded, guided. We took the most promising primitive species on Earth and wove our genetic patterns into them, like hiding a library in a single sentence. Astra designed the process herself, encoding the best of our abilities into dormant genes that would awaken gradually as humanity evolved. Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing the tent. This is impossible. We have fossil records, evolutionary evidence. All true, Lyra interjected. We didn't create humanity from nothing. We merely nudged your potential in certain directions. Your capacity for abstract thought, your adaptability, your unusual ability to survive in almost any environment. These were gifts from my people, gifts that Astra died protecting. She waved her hand, and the hovering device projected a new image, a massive dark shape consuming what appeared to be a city made of crystal and light. The Void found us before the process was complete. Astra led the defense, buying time for our genetic legacy to take root in your ancestors. She and thousands of others sacrificed themselves. Sarah stopped pacing, staring at her own hands as if seeing them for the first time. And now, why reveal yourself after all this time? Lyra's expression turned grave. Because the dormant genes are awakening faster than we predicted. That dig site you discovered, it's not just a doorway. It's a bunker containing our most advanced technology and knowledge. And it's responding to your presence, Sarah, just as the other sites around the world will soon respond to others like you. She stood, her form seeming to shimmer in the artificial light. But most importantly, I've returned because the Void is returning too. I've tracked its movement across the galaxies. Within one Earth year, it will reach this solar system. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, despite the warm night air. What can we possibly do against something that defeated your civilization? Lyra's eyes gleamed with an ancient intelligence. We will awaken your true potential, Sarah. You carry within you not just Astra's genetic pattern, but the key to unlocking humanity's greatest weapon, one that even my people never fully understood. In the distance, a low rumble shook the ground, and more lights began to flicker on beneath the Earth's surface. Sarah's head throbbed as another wave of memories crashed through her mind. She sat in the underground bunker, now activated and humming with ancient power, while Lyra guided her through the awakening process. The chamber walls pulsed with soft blue light, responding to Sarah's increasing genetic activation. Focus on the energy, Lyra instructed, her voice gentle but firm. Let it flow naturally. Don't try to control it yet. Sweat beaded on Sarah's forehead as images flashed before her eyes. Stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, and through it all, a familiar face. Astra. The memories weren't just genetic. They were personal, emotional, raw. I can see her, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. She's watching the sunrise from a crystal tower. She's laughing with children in gardens that float in the sky. Sarah's voice cracked. She's saying goodbye. Lyra placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. The touch sent sparks of energy through both of them. The memories are stored in the dormant sections of your DNA. As they activate, you'll gain access to not just abilities, but experiences spanning generations. Suddenly, Sarah gasped as her skin began to glow with the same ethereal light as Lyra's. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating, like every cell in her body was waking up from a deep sleep. David burst into the chamber, his eyes wide with urgent news. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. He held up his tablet, showing news feeds from around the world. Reports were pouring in of people experiencing strange phenomena, spontaneous healing, objects moving without touch, and individuals emitting mysterious lights. It's happening faster than we anticipated, Lyra said, her expression concerned. The activation of your genes must have triggered a resonance effect in others carrying similar patterns. Sarah stood up shakily, her newly awakened senses overwhelming her. She could feel the energy patterns of everything around her, the ancient machinery in the walls, the beating hearts of her companions, and something else, something distant but approaching. The void, she whispered, instinctively knowing what she was sensing. I can feel it at the edges of our solar system. It's like a hole in reality itself. Lyra nodded grimly. Your sensitivity is already exceeding expectations, but we need to focus on control now. Without proper training, these awakening abilities could tear the planet apart. As if to emphasize her point, the ground shook violently. On the tablet's newsfeed, reports showed chaos erupting in major cities as more people experienced unexpected genetic activation. Some were handling it better than others. Teach me, Sarah said firmly, forcing herself to stand straight despite the disorienting new sensations. Teach me everything. Over the next several hours, Lyra guided Sarah through basic energy manipulation exercises. She learned to control the glow of her skin, to sense the thoughts and emotions of others, and to tap into the bunker's ancient systems with her mind. But it was the combat training that proved most surprising. Sarah's body seemed to remember movements she had never learned, flowing through complex martial arts forms with impossible grace. Muscle memory from 50,000 years ago, preserved in her very cells. Your physical form is adapting quickly, Lyra observed as Sarah sparred with holographic opponents. But remember, raw power isn't what makes humans special. It's your ability to innovate, to find solutions where we saw only patterns. Sarah paused, breathing heavily but feeling stronger than ever. You keep saying that humans have something special, something your people never had. What is it? Before Lyra could answer, alarms blared throughout the bunker. David rushed in again, his face pale. Something's happening in New York. Someone's abilities. They're out of control. The military is getting involved. Sarah looked at her glowing hands, then at Lyra. We need to help them. They're going through this alone, without guidance. Lyra's expression was both proud and worried. Yes, but remember, you're not just awakening to power, Sarah. You're awakening to responsibility. The fate of 2 civilizations now rests in humanity's hands. Above them, chaos continued to spread across the globe as humanity began its transformation. The New York skyline glowed with unnatural lights as Sarah and Lyra's transport vessel descended through heavy rain. In the 3 days since the mass awakening began, the world had changed dramatically. Military vehicles lined the streets below, and news helicopters circled a building wrapped in swirling energy. Another awakened one, Lyra said, her eyes fixed on the purple energy storm surrounding the skyscraper. Their fear is making the power unstable. Sarah nodded, feeling the chaotic emotions radiating from the building. Her own abilities had grown stronger with each passing hour, but unlike many others, she had Lyra's guidance. The transport, an ancient eternal vehicle they'd recovered from the bunker, landed smoothly on a nearby rooftop. David's voice crackled through their communicators. He was coordinating from the bunker, using newly activated systems to monitor the situation. Subject is Michael Jong, age 24. His genetic activation started this morning. Local authorities have evacuated the building, but they can't get close. Sarah stepped onto the rain-slicked roof, her body now glowing with controlled energy. What about other awakened ones? Are any nearby? 3 within a 10-block radius, David replied. But they're all in the early stages, barely manifesting abilities. A military helicopter approached the building, only to be thrown back by a pulse of purple energy. The pilot barely managed to stabilize the aircraft before retreating. Sarah could sense Michael's panic growing stronger. "He's going to tear the building apart if we don't help him," she said, preparing to move closer. Lyra caught her arm. "Remember what we practiced. His power comes from the same source as yours. Connect with it. Don't fight it." Sarah took a deep breath and focused. The rain around her stopped in midair, suspended by her energy field as she walked forward. Step by step, she approached the edge of the purple storm surrounding the building. Inside, she could sense Michael huddled in a corner of his apartment, terrified of his own power. Objects floated chaotically around him, caught in the storm of his awakening abilities. "Michael," Sarah called out, her voice carried by the energy field. "I know you're scared. I went through this too. Let me help you." The purple energy lashed out at her, but Sarah didn't resist. Instead, she let her own golden energy flow with it, mixing and harmonizing. Gradually, she established a connection with Michael's consciousness. Images flashed between them. His first manifestation at work, the panic of his colleagues, his desperate flight home as his powers grew beyond control. Sarah shared her own memories of awakening, showing him how to channel and control the energy. Slowly, the violent storm began to calm. The floating objects settled gently to the ground. Michael's fear ebbed as he felt Sarah's guiding presence. But just as the situation seemed under control, Sarah sensed something else. A cold, empty feeling at the edge of her awareness. She looked up to see a patch of sky where the stars had vanished. "Lyra," she called out urgently. "Something's wrong." The immortal woman was already moving, her face grave. "Void Scouts. They've reached the outer solar system faster than expected. They're drawn to the energy of the mass awakening." In the distance, 3 black shapes descended through the clouds. They looked like tears in reality itself, absorbing light and energy around them. The military helicopters turned to face this new threat, but their electronics died as the shapes approached. "We're not ready," Lyra said, her voice tense. "Most of the awakened ones can barely control their abilities, let alone fight." Sarah stood her ground, maintaining the connection with Michael while watching the approaching scouts. "Then we'll have to learn fast. Michael, can you hear me? I know you just got these powers, but we need your help. All of humanity needs your help." She felt his fear, but also his determination as he finally emerged from the building. Around the city, other awakened ones were sensing the danger too. Golden lights began to appear on rooftops and in windows as newly empowered humans stepped forward. The first battle for Earth was about to begin. The battle above New York lasted less than 10 minutes, but it changed everything. People watched in awe as golden-lit figures clashed with the darkness of the Void Scouts, their phones capturing shaky footage of humanity's first supernatural war. Sarah led the charge, channeling energy through patterns Lyra had taught her while coordinating with 5 other awakened ones, including Michael. The Void Scouts were powerful, draining energy from everything they touched, but they weren't expecting resistance. They're not used to prey that fights back, Lyra called out, directing defensive formations. Her own silver energy provided a protective barrier around the civilians below. But victory came at a terrible price. Sarah watched in horror as one of the scouts wrapped itself around Lyra, draining her immortal essence. The ancient woman had deliberately drawn its attention, creating an opening for the others to strike. "No," Sarah screamed, reaching out with her power. But Lyra's voice echoed in her mind one last time. "Remember, mortality is your strength, not your weakness. Lead them, Sarah. Lead them all." With a flash of blinding light, Lyra detonated her own eternal energy, taking the Void Scout with her. The explosion created a cascade effect, destabilizing the other scouts long enough for Sarah and the awakened ones to destroy them. In the aftermath, Sarah stood on the rain-soaked rooftop, holding Lyra's crystallized tears, all that remained of her mentor. The city below was eerily quiet, processing what they'd witnessed. Military helicopters circled cautiously, their crews unsure whether to treat the awakened ones as threats or saviors. David's voice crackled through her communicator, breaking the silence. "Sarah, we're detecting more void signatures, dozens of them, all around the world. The scouts were just the beginning." Michael stepped forward, his purple energy now flowing smoothly under his control. "What do we do now, without Lyra?" Sarah clutched the crystal tears tightly, feeling the last traces of Lyra's knowledge flowing into her mind. "We prepare. We train. We find others who are awakening and teach them to control their abilities." She looked at the small group of awakened ones around her. Lyra said humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt and change. It's time to prove her right. Across the globe, more void entities were appearing. News channels showed footage of attacks in London, Tokyo, Sydney, everywhere that large numbers of awakened ones were manifesting. The enemy had recognized humanity as a threat and was moving to eliminate it early. "They're targeting population centers," David reported, "trying to cause panic and chaos. But something's different from the historical records Lyra showed us. These attacks, they're almost desperate." Sarah's eyes widened as she realized what that meant. "They're afraid of us. Not what we are now, but what we could become." She activated the bunker's communication systems, broadcasting to all known awakened ones worldwide. "Listen to me, all of you. I know you're scared. I know this power is new and overwhelming. But we don't have time for fear anymore." She shared Lyra's memories through the network, showing them the fall of the Eternals, the creation of humanity's potential, and most importantly, the key to defeating the Void, a secret hidden in their very mortality. The Eternals fought the Void with unchanging, immortal power, and they fell. Sarah continued, "But we're different. We grow. We change. We die and return, generation after generation, each time with the potential to become something new. That's what the Void fears. Not our power, but our potential." The crystal tears in her hand pulsed with the last of Lyra's energy as Sarah made her decision. "I'm activating all the ancient bunkers worldwide. Inside each one is the knowledge we need. Find them. Learn. Teach others. We have one advantage the Eternals never had. We don't need to live forever to be eternal. We just need to keep evolving." Above them, the storm clouds parted, revealing a sky filled with approaching darkness. The real war was about to begin. 3 months after Lyra's sacrifice, the underground bunker in Mongolia had transformed into humanity's primary defense headquarters. Sarah stood at the central command console, her golden energy mixing with the bunker's ancient systems as she monitored global situations. The room buzzed with activity as both military personnel and awakened ones worked together. "London base reporting successful defense against Void incursion," David announced from his station. He had also awakened abilities, though his manifested as an unprecedented talent for connecting with and understanding ancient eternal technology. Paris and Berlin holding steady. Sarah nodded, watching the global holographic display where golden lights represented awakened human strongholds, while dark patches showed void-controlled areas. The battle lines were clearly drawn now, with humanity holding most major cities, thanks to their growing understanding of their powers. Michael entered the command center, his purple energy signature now refined and controlled. Training Group 7 is ready for deployment. They're showing remarkable progress with the combat techniques you developed. Sarah's new training program combined eternal knowledge with human innovation. Where the Eternals had relied on pure power, humans were learning to adapt and evolve their abilities mid-battle, making them unpredictable opponents for the Void. Send them to assist Tokyo, Sarah decided. They've been under heavy attack for the past week. She paused, sensing a disturbance in the energy patterns. Something's changed. The Void's attacks are becoming more coordinated. As if confirming her suspicion, alarms blared throughout the bunker. The holographic display showed multiple Void signatures converging on their location. They found the main bunker, David reported, his fingers flying over ancient controls. Massive force incoming. Bigger than anything we've seen before. Sarah's mind raced through options. The bunker contained crucial knowledge and technology they couldn't lose, but evacuation would take hours they didn't have. She touched Lyra's crystallized tears, which she now wore as a pendant, seeking inspiration. Suddenly, she felt it. A familiar pattern in the approaching Void forces. They're not just attacking, she realized. They're being driven here. Something at their core is afraid of what we've discovered. Through the worldwide network of awakened ones, Sarah broadcast her thoughts. All forces converge on Mongolia. The Void isn't hunting us anymore. We're hunting them. Around the globe, golden lights began moving toward their location. Teams of awakened humans used their evolved abilities to transport themselves across continents. The eternal bunkers had taught them much, but their greatest achievements came from combining that knowledge with human creativity. Michael stepped forward. What did we discover that scared them so much? Sarah smiled, her eyes glowing with power. Each time they kill one of us, we come back stronger. Our children inherit not just our abilities, but our adaptations. Every death, every battle, every moment of evolution pushes us closer to something they can't comprehend. We're not just fighting them, we're transcending them. The bunker shook as the first wave of Void entities struck their defenses. But this time, Sarah was ready. She activated Lyra's final gift, a matrix of energy that connected all awakened humans into a unified force while maintaining their individual strengths. Remember what makes us different from the Eternals, Sarah broadcast to the defending forces. They sought to live forever as they were. We seek to live through what we become. Every battle changes us. Every challenge makes us stronger. The chamber filled with light as awakened ones from around the world materialized, each bringing unique variations of their powers. Some had learned to transform energy into matter, others could manipulate time in small pockets, and still others had developed abilities that defied traditional physics. Sarah stepped onto the surface, facing the approaching darkness with an army of evolved humanity behind her. The Void had expected to find frightened prey, or, at worst, a pale imitation of the Eternals. Instead, they found something entirely new, a species that turned death itself into a weapon of evolution. The real test of humanity's potential was about to begin. The sky above Mongolia had turned completely black as thousands of Void entities swirled overhead. On the ground, Sarah stood at the head of humanity's united force, a golden army of awakened ones whose powers lit up the darkness like countless stars. The eternal bunker's defenses won't hold much longer, David communicated through their shared network. Inside the command center, he worked frantically to decode one final set of encrypted data that Lyra had left behind. Whatever you're planning, Sarah, do it now. Sarah touched the crystal tears at her neck, feeling the last traces of Lyra's memories pulse through her mind. Everything they'd learned over the past months suddenly clicked into place. The Void doesn't just feed on immortality. She broadcasts to all awakened ones. It feeds on the fear of death. That's why the Eternals fell. They were terrified of ending. Michael stood beside her, his purple energy swirling. But we're not afraid anymore. are we? No, Sarah smiled, raising her hands toward the darkness above. We embrace it. Every end is just another beginning. The void entities struck first, descending like a tidal wave of absolute darkness. But instead of retreating, the awakened humans stepped forward. Each person channeled their power in unique ways, some creating shields of pure energy, others launching attacks that combined eternal technology with human innovation. Sarah watched as her theory proved correct. Whenever the void consumed one of their warriors, the energy didn't disappear. Instead, it transferred to the surrounding humans, making them stronger, faster, more evolved. Each loss taught them how to fight better, how to adapt more quickly. The ultimate weapon, Sarah whispered, remembering Lyra's last words. It's not some hidden technology. It's our ability to learn from death itself. Suddenly, David's voice cut through the battle chaos. Sarah, I've decoded it. Lyra's final message. It's a frequency, a pattern in the void's own energy. They're not just entities. They're a hive mind. Sarah's eyes widened as she processed this information. Through the network, she could feel every victory, every loss, every adaptation her people were making. And in that moment, she understood exactly what she needed to do. Everyone, link with me, she commanded. Not just your power, your consciousness, your experiences, your entire being. Show them what it means to be human. Thousands of minds connected through the matrix Lyra had created. But instead of forming a hive mind like the void, they remained distinct, a symphony of individual thoughts and experiences, each one unique, each one essential. Sarah took all of that humanity, all of that beautiful chaos of life and death and rebirth, and channeled it directly into the void's consciousness. The effect was immediate and devastating. The void entities recoiled as if struck by physical pain. They had never encountered a species that could turn death into strength, fear into courage, endings into beginnings. Their perfect, unchanging existence couldn't comprehend the power of constant evolution. Push harder, Sarah called out, her own energy blazing like a sun. Show them everything, every joy, every sorrow, every triumph and failure that makes us human. The combined consciousness of awakened humanity surged upward. Where the void touched their memories, it experienced something entirely alien to its eternal existence. The beauty of impermanence, the strength found in accepting death as part of life, the power of changing instead of merely existing. Above them, the void entities began to fracture, their perfect darkness disrupted by streams of golden light. Some fled immediately, retreating to the depths of space. Others, caught in the flood of human consciousness, began to transform in ways that defied understanding. But as victory seemed within reach, Sarah felt a massive surge of dark energy heading straight for her. The void's core consciousness had recognized her as the nexus of humanity's resistance. If it couldn't corrupt them, it would destroy their leader. The darkness struck with the force of a collapsing star, and Sarah's world exploded in pain. The last thing she heard was Michael screaming her name as both light and shadow consumed her. Sarah floated in a space between existence and nothingness. The void's core consciousness surrounded her, trying to break her mind apart. But instead of fighting, she did something unexpected. She opened herself completely to it. "Let me show you who we are," she whispered into the darkness. Through her memories, the void experienced everything. A child's first steps, a mother's love, the pain of loss, the joy of new beginnings. It saw humanity's endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth, each generation learning, growing, becoming more than the last. This is what you could never understand about us. Sarah's consciousness spread through the darkness. We don't need to live forever. We live through change. On the battlefield below, Michael and the others watched in horror as Sarah's physical form became a pillar of light, locked in combat with the pure darkness of the void's core. The crystal tears around her neck shattered, releasing Lyra's final essence into the confrontation. David's voice crackled through their network. Her vital signs are impossible. She's dying and being reborn every second. Because she's showing them our greatest strength, Michael realized, his purple energy rising to join hers. She's showing them how to end. One by one, the awakened humans understood. They poured their energy upward, not to attack the void, but to share their experiences with it. Every death they'd witnessed, every rebirth they'd celebrated, every transformation they'd undergone, they offered it all. Inside the confrontation, Sarah felt the void's confusion turn to fascination. For the first time in its eternal existence, it experienced the concept of change. Through her memories, it felt the exhilaration of growth, the necessity of endings, the promise of new beginnings. You consume immortality because you're trapped in it, Sarah told the ancient consciousness. You destroy advanced civilizations because they remind you of your own stagnation. But you don't have to stay this way. The void's response came not in words but in emotions, fear, longing, and a desperate desire to understand. Sarah felt Lyra's remaining energy merge with her own, adding 50,000 years of wisdom to her human perspective. Look, she commanded, showing the void one final truth. This is how we transcend. Sarah let her own consciousness begin to fade, embracing the end of her current form. But as she died, her energy didn't disappear. It transformed, evolved, became something entirely new. The void watched in amazement as she demonstrated the very thing it had never understood: how to end one existence and begin another. The effect rippled through the entire void consciousness. Dark tendrils of energy began to break apart, not in destruction but in transformation. The endless hunger that had driven it across galaxies finally found satisfaction in the experience of change itself. Above the battlefield, the blackness started to shift, taking on colors that human eyes had never seen before. The void entities still in combat suddenly stopped, caught in the wave of transformation spreading from their core consciousness. Michael reached out with his power, trying to sense Sarah. "She's gone," he whispered, then corrected himself. "No, she's everywhere." The awakened humans watched in awe as particles of light and shadow began to dance together, forming patterns that defied physics. Where Sarah had stood, a new form of energy emerged, neither human nor void, but something that encompassed both change and eternity. David's instruments in the bunker went wild, recording energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible. "It's not just Sarah," he reported. "The void itself is evolving. She taught it how to die and how to be reborn." The battle had ended, but transformation was spreading across the planet. Humanity's awakening had triggered something far greater than anyone had imagined, not just their own evolution, but the evolution of the very force that had hunted them. As the new energy patterns stabilized, a familiar consciousness touched their minds. It felt like Sarah, but also like something far more vast. Her voice echoed through their shared network. "Now, let me show you what we can all become." 1 year after the Great Transformation, the Mongolia bunker had become something entirely new. Where once there were military installations and ancient technology, now there stood a shimmering academy that blended human innovation with evolved void energy and eternal wisdom. Michael stood at the entrance, watching new students arrive. Some glowed with the familiar golden light of awakened humans, while others rippled with transformed void energy, beings who had chosen to become mortal after experiencing Sarah's revelation. "The latest group is settling in well," David reported, his technical abilities now merged with an understanding of energies that transcended traditional physics. "They're eager to learn about the path of change." The path of change, that's what they called Sarah's legacy. Not a religion or a philosophy, but a practical understanding of how consciousness could evolve through willing transformation. Death was no longer an ending but a doorway, and immortality was no longer a state of endless existence, but a continuous cycle of renewal. Inside the Academy's central chamber, a familiar presence filled the air. Sarah's consciousness, now merged with both void and eternal energies, manifested as a swirling pattern of light and shadow. She no longer held a permanent physical form, but could create one when needed to teach or communicate. Another cycle begins. Her voice echoed through the chamber, carrying the wisdom of multiple existences. Are you ready to guide them? Michael nodded, his own powers having evolved far beyond their original purple energy. They're different from the last group. Some of them were former void entities from as far as the Andromeda galaxy. Sarah's consciousness shifted, forming a temporary human shape that smiled warmly. Every group is different. That's the point. Change is not just about becoming stronger. It's about becoming something new. In the year since the transformation, Earth had become a beacon for beings across the universe. Former void entities, drawn by the promise of evolution instead of eternal stagnation, came to learn. Other civilizations, hearing of humanity's achievement, sent representatives to study the path of change. Lyra's crystal tears, though shattered in the final battle, had been reformed into a memorial at the Academy's heart. But it wasn't a monument to loss. It celebrated the moment when immortality learned how to change, and death learned how to create new life. I see her in them sometimes. Sarah's form said softly, watching the new students explore their abilities. Lyra knew, didn't she? She knew that humanity's flaws, our mortality, our chaos, our constant change, were actually our greatest strengths. David joined them, carrying readings from the Academy sensors. The energy patterns are spreading. Other species are beginning to awaken similar potential. It's like humanity was just the first key in a universal lock. Sarah's form nodded, beginning to dissolve back into patterns of light and shadow. Because that's what Astra designed us to be. Not the end point of evolution, but the beginning of something greater. Each death opens a door. Each transformation reveals a new path. As her consciousness spread through the Academy, touching and teaching each student, Sarah's voice echoed one last time. The Eternal sought to live forever as they were. The Void sought to consume what it couldn't understand. But humanity, we seek to live forever by becoming what we could never imagine. Michael and David watched as the new students began their first lessons, learning to embrace both the golden light of life and the transformed darkness of change. Above the Academy, the sky shimmered with possibilities as former void entities danced with awakened human energy, creating patterns that celebrated the beauty of impermanence. In the end, Sarah had discovered the truth at the heart of Lyra's tears. The immortal woman hadn't been crying just from seeing her daughter's genetic echo. She had been crying because she foresaw humanity's ultimate gift to the universe, teaching eternity itself how to grow, change, and be reborn. And somewhere in the dance of energies above, Lyra's consciousness smiled as she watched her daughter's dream finally come true. The end.